Yes. So could you introduce yourself, please, to the Budget Committee?
Yes, my name is Nicholas Bondog-Wynn.
Thank you for coming. And he's sitting in for our Budget Committee member, Clem, this evening.
Thank you. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Member Bednarz, welcome. All right, meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 3rd?
So second.
All right, we got a motion from Member Tesler and a second from Member Nanki. Any discussion? All right, everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody opposed say nay. All right, meeting minutes are approved.
Budget Officer. And very quickly, I'm to review handout materials with you this evening. You have at your desks the more specific information about the roster for this committee. So you have addresses and other information that we don't publicly distribute. With your packet, you have a roster that has your city email address. Additionally, in your packet, you have the Budget Committee procedures. These are here for your information or to refresh your memory as we begin the 14-15 budget process. This evening's agenda is very light on handout materials because last month the Budget Committee members received the following documents electronically: the fiscal year 12-13 fourth quarter financial summaries for the city and the Urban Renewal Agency, a 6-page budget and brief document providing an overview of the fiscal year 13-14 City of Salem budget, the fiscal year 13-14 first quarter financial summaries for the City of Salem and the Urban Renewal Agency. These documents are all available on the city's or the budget webpage, which is up on the monitor right now up on screen. I wanted to have that available this evening so that members of the public who may be watching know where they can find the materials that are discussed at these meetings. Additionally, on this website are financial forecasts for many previous years, and the documents that will be discussed with you this evening will be added to the website tomorrow. So with that, I will turn the microphone over to the city manager.
Thank you so much. I'm here tonight to present the financial forecast for the general fund, and then last year we also started doing forecasts for the building and safety fund, the water and sewer fund, and transportation fund. So I'll be giving all of those tonight. You have just received the materials, so this will be the first time you've heard it, but for the new budget committee members or any other budget committee members, if you want to schedule a meeting sometime and come in and talk about it in more detail, we're happy to meet with you about that. Make sure this is turned on. So the first thing I'm going to do is present the general fund forecast, and these are the key messages we still have, as we have had every year, and we just manage it through our operations every year. We have an imbalance between revenues and expenditures. We're on track again this year to preserve financial stability into the third year of the forecast, although it gets pretty lean in that year, which I'll show you in a minute. And over the last 3 years of the forecast, we're projecting the need for $6 million of operation reductions. I'm suggesting that we not do those reductions sooner than that unless we lose the PERS lawsuit, which I'll talk about again in a minute, because by the last 3 years of the forecast, the economy may have improved enough that we won't have to make cuts of a level of $6 million. The PERS lawsuit outcome is the biggest variable we have in the general fund budget. So the general fund for new budget committee members are the general operations of the city that are available to all citizens: police, fire, parks and recreation, code enforcement. different than enterprise funds like water and sewer, where you receive a benefit, the water and sewer use, and then you pay a revenue. So it's not an enterprise fund, it's general fund supported with property tax and other types of revenue, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is the city's budget for this current fiscal year, the one we're in. The general fund, including de jure loans for the Salem Urban Renewal Agency, where money goes out and then comes back in, is $111.4 million, and that's the part we're talking about now. This gives you an idea of the size of the departments in terms of their expenditures. You can see that police and fire are by far the most costly services in the city. They operate 24 hours a day, and we've been reducing our budget every year since 2008. So in terms of additional, when you think about $6 million more in reductions in the last 3 years of the forecast, you can see that without impacting police and fire, there aren't that many opportunities for further reductions. So it's going to take a lot of creative thought about how we get through that if we end up in that situation. We've lost, as this year's budget was approved, we've lost 94.1 positions in the general fund since the beginning of the recession. We've added, this year we added 3 positions back, 2 in legal and 1 in the city manager's office. So financial forecast is our annual estimate of revenue and expenditures over a 5-year period. So it's our best look at this point in time of where we'll be over the next 5 years for revenue and expenditure. We use a forecast as a basis for the following year's budget in terms of how much revenue we'll have and what we think operations costs will be. Every year we do a Schedule A, and that answers a question. If we kept the current services we have right now, we didn't try to have any savings or make other changes, what would that look like? And then Schedule B is one we've been putting together since the recession started that looks at financial stability over most of the forecast period. I hope someday we will only have to have a Schedule A again, but not probably over this 5-year period. So the objectives we've had for several years are these, that we want to have an adequate beginning working capital, which we've defined as no less than $10 million to start the year. We want to avoid any kind of short-term budget decisions that cause a crisis in the out years of the forecast. So for example, we might feel in one year that there's an adequate beginning fund balance. It would be nice to add services back for $2 million, but then you can see in this second, third, and fourth year, the forecast would be in a negative fund balance. So we take a long view. We align actual operating costs with annual revenue and try to achieve a third year ending working capital of at least $10 million. Schedule B of this forecast meets those objectives. So this will show you what our beginning working capital has been since 2011, what it actually was. We are projected this year to reduce from 20.8 to 19.3 million, which is really monthly operating expenses are almost $9 million. So you can see it's not many months of operating expenses. We have a AA- bond credit rating, which is very good, very stable. When we had our last credit rating a few months ago, they suggested that we needed to keep the beginning fund balance at least at that level or higher, which you can see as we go through the forecast will be very difficult to do. This chart shows the percent of revenues expended and then what the ending working capital is. So that line would be, if we were at 100%, that would mean that we spent every dollar we brought in current revenue, that we maintained the beginning working capital at the same level, but spent all of the current revenue. And you can see for FY 2014, we think for the first time since the recession started, we're going to need to eat into beginning working capital a little bit. We just don't have many opportunities for annual savings any longer. So our revenue concerns, these are the 4 major revenue sources for the general fund. Property tax at $55 million, Then franchise fees, you can see how fast the total amount of these revenue falls off. Franchise fees, $15.6 million. It's been pretty flat for a few years. State shared revenue at $4.5 million, and then the next largest revenue source is fines and penalties at $2.5 million. So what happens with property tax makes a huge difference in the general fund. We expect property tax to continue to grow. This line looks steeper than it actually is because the scale's small. But we do expect that we'll continue to have some increases, but it's just not going to be enough to cover how fast costs are increasing. I want to talk a little bit about compression, and I have some new slides to show the Budget Committee. Right now, 51.4% of houses in our taxing area are in compression. And you can see how that's increased from fiscal year 2009. And what that means is the property tax can't go up the full 3%. There's either no tax increase because assessed valuation is equal to real market value, or it's within 3%, and so we may only have 1% increase for some houses or 2% increase. This shows, and it's the first time we've been able to get this, and I really appreciate the finance department's hard working in mapping this and getting it from the assessor. It shows how many households in Marion County are in compression currently, and it's a pretty frightening, to me, map. And, pardon me?
It's not just households, though.
That's right. That's right. It's property tax compression, not just households. And this one shows the ratio of assessed valuation to real market value. So you can see that the properties that are at 100% in compression are in the red. Those that are within the 3% are yellow. And then ones where we're still collecting about 3% property tax increase per year are green. So it's a big concern to us as we go forward. And until real market values increase pretty substantially, this will be our reality. So what that means is we lose money that we otherwise would have received in property tax that we won't get because of compression. So this is Schedule A that we'll talk about next. If we kept doing everything we're doing now, what would happen? And you can see that by the end of the fiscal year 15-16, we're slightly below our target, but if you look at the years after that, we have a significant reduction. Now, the Schedule A is put together that we only have the $1.9 million in PERS savings in the current year, and this assumes it's kind of a worst-case scenario. If we're not successful defending the PERS lawsuit, what that means in terms of how much we'd have to cut over the next several years. And this is also, I think it's important to know, every year since we started the recession, we've tried to save between 3 and 5% every year off of expenditures by either making mid-year cuts or having vacant positions or not going out for contracts or finding other ways to do operations less expensively. We have pretty much cut what we can, or saved what we can save now from general operations. So in this forecast, we're anticipating savings of 1.25%. So quite a bit lower than we've had previously. And this just shows when you look at total, if you look especially at current year revenues and net expenditures, you can see what that difference is every year. Schedule B, which is where we try to make sure we stay consistent with our policy. This does keep us at $10.7 million at the end of the 5 years, but you can see in years 16, 17, and 17, 18, we fall slightly below that. Once we know the outcome of the PERS lawsuit, we'll start making adjustments as we go. But in Schedule B, we've assumed that the defense of the lawsuit is successful and are showing what would happen in that event. And again, the estimated savings per year are 1.25%. And again, looking at total resources compared to net expenditures. Expenses here cumulatively are 8.7 million more than revenues over the 5 years. So that's our challenge. I thought you might want to look at resources. The first two lines are resources in last year's forecast compared to this forecast, and then net expenditures last year's forecast compared to this one. So we've increased resources just a little bit. I think we were very conservative last year, so we've been able to adjust that up a little bit. But expenditures are going to be a little bit higher as we go out, because PERS, although there was PERS reform, the PERS rates are still going to increase every 2-year cycle. And again, current revenues expended for Schedule B, which shows that will be, even with the reductions we're thinking about now, will be eating into the general fund or the beginning working capital. And that's what we'll adjust once we know what the outcome of the PERS lawsuit is. So our operations cost concerns are PERS rate increases, healthcare cost increases, although those have stayed within about the 6 to 10% increase, which is, I think, pretty good in terms of the marketplace overall. And then labor rates and collective bargaining agreements. This shows PERS. We talk about the pension bond debt service, which is we bonded our unfunded liability in about 2007, I think. We have a 6% pickup for employees, and then what the employer contribution is. And that's increased dramatically over the last few years as we had the market slow down through the recession. After this time period, if the lawsuit is successfully defended, the rate should go down after that. So there are a lot of factors in the forecast that are not within our control: PERS rates, healthcare cost increases. There are still many things yet to be known about the Affordable Care Act. Increased property tax compression. We have limited opportunities for additional revenue in the general fund. And then recession and inflation, but I think those have stabilized quite a bit. So as we put this forecast together, we assume no new revenues or increased fees, and we may have some increased fees as we go, and reasonable conservative estimates for the 5-year period. So the assumptions are we'll make reductions as we need to. If we find out during this next fiscal year that we did not successfully defend, that cities and counties did not successfully defend the lawsuit, we'll come back with potential reductions if we need to do that. There are no new services or higher service levels included in this forecast over the 5-year period. For market wage adjustments for represented employees, those that are represented by a union, it's either what their contract increases are or 1% for the years where we don't have a contract yet. And for non-represented, 2% next year is needed for market adjustments. So not everyone necessarily would get a 2% increase, but we know we have a number of positions that are behind market, and then 1% each year after that. In the forecast, we're assuming we maintain the $400,000 per year support to social services, that we continue to use TOP funds to support the eligible parks operations, and we have about a 1.2 increase generally for all materials and services. So that stayed pretty low, except in areas where we know the costs are going to be higher than that. I've allocated, rather than setting aside $500,000 for hardware, software, and facilities costs, we've actually are going to be allocating those within the budget, so you can see what that is. Lowered anticipated department savings, as I've said, from 3% to 1.25%. And we assume every year in the forecast that we don't spend more than $200,000 of the general fund contingency. We have a general fund contingency of $2.5 million per year. And we try not to spend more than $200,000. And this council, for the last several years through the recession, has been very good about that. We've stayed within that amount each year. So these are our revenue risks: high risk for slower property tax growth, medium for state shared revenue and franchise revenue. Expenditure risk: high for PERS, medium for healthcare and labor costs, and then low risk of inflation. That seems to be pretty stable. So in summary, operating costs are going to outpace revenue, so we'll have to make some reductions in the third, fourth, and fifth years if things stay as projected. Third, fourth, and fifth years of the forecast. Still have a lot of volatility that's outside our control, and especially in relation to PERS rates. Because we have built up our beginning working capital over the last few years, we're able to have one more year of relative stability in general fund services, but still have that imbalance between revenue and operating costs, which I think the legislature is not going to take up in their short session, but may in next year's full session. So that's the end of the general fund. I'm going to go through the other funds, if that's all right, Mr. Chair, and then we'll take questions from the Budget Committee members or any general public, although these mostly look like employees except for Roger. Okay. So transportation. This, of all the funds in the city, this is the one I'm most concerned about, as council is very aware, and I think people who've been on the Budget Committee are also very aware of. So our overall message is we have a continued imbalance between revenues and expenditures here as well, but it's happening right now. We have a responsibility to maintain our core transportation services. We're not going to have enough money to do even the lower level of maintenance, overlays, patching that we've been doing in the last few years. We'll have immediate and severe expenditure reductions, or we need additional revenue to prevent depletion of the working capital. So of the entire general fund budget, you can see that transportation services is $12.1 million. This is Schedule A again. We think we can, we have in here anticipated expenditure savings of 3%. Just the PERS savings for the first year, as you can see here, and you can see we dropped from 1.3 ending working capital in the current fiscal year to only 700,000, then 100,000, and then we're in a negative position, which we can't be. We have to make cuts. We can never be in a negative position under Oregon budget law. So this is what we're anticipating, that we have the PERS savings. This is if we successfully defend the lawsuit. Permanent reductions shown on the next line, and then what those ongoing cumulative reductions are, so every year. And hope to have, by making the reductions we're making here every year, some reductions, to hope to keep about $1.5 million to $1.6 million in ending fund balance. Our goal with the transportation fund is to keep 2 months of state highway transportation revenue as ending working capital. We need the beginning working capital, the ending working capital, which then goes into the next year's as beginning working capital, so that we have funds to use those first months of the budget year before we start receiving revenue. And we need to have some reserves in case we have more storms or flooding, as we have had in previous years. In terms of transportation services, I think it's important to think about transportation as there's a safety factor here in terms of people being able to use a transportation system, having safe sidewalks. And I know the council has worked on very hard in the 9 years I've been here to ensure that we have that we're able to do patching, that we keep our roads in at least adequate repair. It has, by not maintaining a transportation system, it kind of has that broken window effect in a community, and doesn't help when we're trying to do economic development and bring people to our community if the streets and sidewalks are in really poor repair. The other thing about transportation that's important to know is if it's not done, if you don't do preventative work, it costs significantly more to replace and tear up streets and completely rebuild them. So it's a big challenge. I know the Budget Committee and the Council has really struggled with this and tried to find ways to resolve it, but I think this summer we should take another look again and see what we might be able to do to make sure that we can provide this core service in our community. So, water and sewer services, this fund is stable. happy to say. Yes. And partly because, pardon me?
Say it's stable because we have the ability to raise rates.
That's right.
We keep it stable, so.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Part of that is because council has, and our citizen committee has recommended rate increases each year needed to continue the stability. So revenue growth does fund operations and provides reserves. We have a slight increase in capital construction. We've spent several years not being able to do the amount of capital construction we really need to do in our water and sewer system. That will continue. We'll be underfunded there through the forecast, but we feel that we'll be able to do the things that are most critical to do. Growth rates for the number of customer accounts we think will increase by about 0.25% per year. Water consumption, though, continues to decline at about 2.75% per year. So people are using less water to conserve and save money. That means we have less revenue in our water and sewer fund. And although we appreciate conservation, in this case, it has a negative impact on the fund balance. So what we need is more manufacturing companies that use more water. So this shows that the water and sewer budget is about $94.1 million. And Schedule B is what I'm showing here. So we have, this assumes, all of the Schedule Bs assume that we successfully defend the PERS lawsuit. And we've just called out the PERS savings here so you know what they are by fund. And you can see that we're able to maintain an adequate ending fund, working capital each year in the water and sewer fund. And this is with, we did 6% rate increase in January 2013 and 6% in January 2014. And the forecast assumes we do 3% annual increases over the 5-year period. Next is building and safety. And this fund is doing much better now, and we've seen some impact from increased building activity in the economy, which we're really pleased about. Year over year, issuance of dwelling permits has gone up 25.5%. There were a few years ago I didn't think we'd see this number again. We have 2% revenue inflation for increased permit activity. One of the things about this fund, as we have more construction activity, we've reduced our staffing to the recession levels of work. And as the work increases, we'll need to increase staff in this fund. Building and safety is $3.5 million per year. You can see that we have a stable ending working capital in this fund over the 5 years of the forecast. Within that ending working capital, we have a service stabilization reserve so that if we have a bad year in terms of not much building permit activity, we are able to just kind of gradually reduce services instead of having to drop them quickly and not provide the service we need. And then we have a capital asset reserve of $650,000, and that is to do it's for some hardware, some software like online permitting and other things that really give increased value to our customers so that they can access permits and apply for permits online when they need to do that. This shows what building permit activity was prior to the recession, and then it's kind of flatlined for a few years, but the bottom graph, breaking it out in more detail, shows that we're on an upward cycle now. It always drops in December because there's not much building activity in December, but then it goes up after that. The valuation of the permits, for a while we had an increase in permits, but the valuation was smaller. Now it's growing. It's higher than during the recession years, not as high as the pre-recession years, though. But we have some big projects coming up, and that will help with that. So that's building and safety. That was very brief, but it's also in good shape. A few years ago, we were concerned about all these funds, and now it's really our transportation fund and, to a lesser degree, the general fund that we're concerned about. So the budget process is departments receive their budget targets in December. Their budgets are due to me in late January. The draft budget will be available in April. It'll be online for the community, and then you'll receive either a hard copy or you may want to just look online. Budget committee meetings are in April and May, and the final approved budget, you make a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council must approve a balanced budget by June 30th. So that's a very short forecast presentation, but now, Mr. Chair, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Hello, thank you, City Manager Norris. Do we have anybody from the public signed up to testify, or somebody would like to step up to the microphone? Nope. Do we have any member of the Budget Committee? This is your chance. Sure. Member Bednarz.
Thank you. So at this point, a lot of what you presented tonight was using Schedule B. There's a presumption that there's going to be some success with the lawsuit and that we will not. Is there money being set aside just in case that contingency?
No, there's not. We know we'll have the savings this year that we had anticipated, the $1.9 million in the general fund. But if we're not successful, we'll have to likely make some mid-year reductions or make the reductions in the next fiscal year.
Okay. If I may ask another question. The other one was, you said in the general fund that at least in the next couple of years we'll be falling below the $10 million, at least with the projections that we have now. Is there any way that we could I'm trying to figure out how to smooth that out so that you're not dipping so far below before you come back up to the 10 million?
Actually, in fiscal year 14-15, the one coming up will end with 16.3 million.
Okay.
And then in 15-16, we'll be at 12 million. So the next 2 years, we're pretty stable and within our goals. But the last 3 years of the forecast will be below.
Okay,
the 10
same
million.
question. I'm just trying to figure out how to, if you cut back in the next 2 years, can you level out the next, or the subsequent 3 years?
We can. My recommendation is we see what happens with the PERS lawsuit, because that can be a pretty significant game changer in terms of what we have to do and how soon we have to do it. The reason I'm suggesting right now that we hold those cuts to the last 3 years of the forecast is because the economy is improving, and we may not have to cut a full $6 million. So the balancing act that we're always doing is providing as many services as we can to the community while we can, but making sure that we cut in time to avoid financial instability, which we've been able to do pretty well since 2008. So I think we're okay with assuming those cuts are going to happen the last 3 years, unless we get some other bad news before that, and we'll have that news in time to start making mid-year reductions or reductions in the following year's budget.
It would be my suggestion to make sure that this budget committee is kept up to speed on the progress of that lawsuit, because a lot of our decisions will be based on how the turnout of that suit.
It will be, and we will definitely keep you informed.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I don't see your name.
Eddie.
Member Nick.
Nick,
All right, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. The projected is at 99.7 for the 13-14, but then it jumps dramatically up to 108. Why is that such a dramatic increase of about $9 million from 13-14 to 14-15?
Let me get to that page. So, and you're on page
Page 4.
4. We had, in last year's budget, we had some additional savings where we had close to fire stations. We had anticipated that we would have some costs. We didn't budget for that, and then had some savings as a result of the fact that we had to go ahead and close them. So that was kind of an unusual, and it looks like, Kelly, you'd like to...
The projected numbers for 13-14.
You have to pull the microphone down. Yeah.
It's way up there.
I'm sorry. The projected numbers for 1314 are indicative of where we think we'll end the year. So they represent all of our expenditure savings. They represent savings in contingency, just every bit of savings that we can garner for the year. So the reason you see that big jump to the next year in the base expenditures is because for a budget, we have to make full appropriation. We have to appropriate all of our personal services expenses, although we generally derive some savings in personal services. We have to appropriate all of our materials and services. We have to appropriate a contingency. So we have to build a budget generally bigger than what we think that we will spend. That's why in the future years, you see an anticipated level of savings.
And so when you look at, so it's 99.7 million projected 13-14 base expenditures. Then if you go down to total net expenditures, and the next year it's 102.8 rather than 108. And it would be less than that if we thought we could do 3% savings per year, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that any longer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or conversations? All right. Thank you very much, City
And believe it or not, this is better news than we've had in some of the last few years.
All right.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Public Works Director Peter Fernandez. The microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll have to just find my presentation up here. Over here? All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Peter Fernandez, Public Works Department. And what we started a few years ago was the opportunity that in these early Budget Committee meetings, we would present to you what the department organization is and what services we provide, so that when we get to the April meetings, then we're just talking numbers. So I have the great pleasure to being the first department to present, and then I think next month, right, Kelly, the rest of the departments, the rest of the service departments are presenting. So with that, let me start with our organizational chart to just give you an introduction of our department. We are organized in 4 operating divisions. They are Planning and Development, which is headed by our Assistant Director, Robert Chandler. The Operations Division, headed by Francis Kessler, our Operations Division Manager. Engineering, headed by our City Engineer, Jim Bonnet, and Parks and Transportation Services Division, headed by Mark Bechtel, our Parks and Transportation Services Manager. And then across the top, we have a Business and Finance unit, which is our Management Analyst Corps. That is a separate unit. I like that it reports directly to me, and I like to maybe in the at some future presentation I'll graph it as a Venn diagram. So I have my management team, which are the division managers, and this business and finance unit, and I'm the only member of both groups sitting in the middle. So that group provides services to each of the divisions, and also provides a certain level of oversight, so we make sure that the paperwork is done correctly and the purchasing is done correctly and hiring is done correctly, and as well as the budgeting and the future projections of our finances. So you see the names of our senior people there. I like that Linda's presentation had the pie charts, because I too have the pie chart, and you probably noticed that the Public Works Department is over 50% of the city's budget. So in the current budget, those are the statistics. We have 383 full-time employees. Our employment ranks swell to well over 400 in the summertime, with recreation seasonals and street maintenance seasonals and selected others. Our total operating budget over all of our funds is $114 million, and in the 13-14 budget, we have $122 million in the capital construction budget. We operate over a number of different funds, and I'm sure if you're familiar with the way the funds are laid out. If not, you soon will be. Our biggest fund is Fund 310, which is the Water and Sewer Fund, and then you see the amounts in the pie chart for the Public Works Fund, Fund 155. Public Works is parks and transportation. Water Sewer has everything else, so engineering, all the other operating units that you saw, and I'll show you a graphic here in a minute how that lays out, are in Fund 310. We have a small slice of the general fund that's mostly recreation and the senior center, and then the capital construction funds, which are 255, 260, and 275 that you see there. Here is the organizational chart again, and what I've done is I've attempted to illustrate then where each one of the units in the organization are listed in the budget and where they're funded. So the director with my business and finance unit, planning and development, operations, and engineering are all funded in Fund 310. So there may be other sources of money, especially in engineering, where there's money that comes in from the capital construction funds, there's money that comes in from the general fund, there's money that comes in from SDCs, but all of the budgeting for them is in Fund 310. So as you open your budget book, you will find them in what is called the Water and Sewer Fund, even though they do more work than water and sewer. And then 155 for Parks and Transportation Services. And then the last two boxes there at the bottom on the right, Recreation Services and Center 50 Plus, are actually budgeted in Fund 101 in the general fund. And then the three construction funds, 255, 260, 275, all flow into work that's done primarily by the engineering division. Okay, so what do we do for the community? And I always like to start, and I've always thought about this, is we do so much. You know, it's such a big department, such a diverse department. And what I've always liked to do in sort of organizing it in my own mind is, if we had a catastrophic disaster, what would we need to bring back first? You know, what is the most critical to the community? And that's how I lay out, was to, you know, to not hurt anybody's feelings in our department. You know, it's clear that our first and foremost, our most critical service that we provide to the community is providing water. So we provide all of the water service. We treat the water at Guerin Island off of in the North Santiam River, and we transport it to Franzen Reservoir in Turner, and then it comes in to our various reservoirs and pump stations in town, and then we serve the entire community, as well as the community of Turner and some water associations in the unincorporated areas. So we serve 185,000 people with water in the community. The next thing that we would need to bring back online in catastrophe is wastewater. So that is the second one. Our plant there is at Willow Lake. It's off of Kaiser. And we serve 220,000 people with wastewater. We are the sole wastewater treatment provider for the entire metro area, including Turner. So we serve a lot of people with our wastewater services, and that's pipes, pump stations, and the plant. And then wastewater also, well, the groups that you see at the next one is stormwater. So flood control, all of our creeks, so environmental stewardship is all part of the stormwater. So it's not just pipes when we provide that service. Next set of services, planning and development. So we have centralized planning that's done for the utility. So in Salem, transportation planning, water planning, wastewater planning, stormwater planning, environmental planning is all done in the Public Works Department. And then in that group, we also have what I call the Public Works arm of building and safety. So when developers come in for an application, they come in through building and safety, but then we have a piece of that puzzle. If they're building public infrastructure, their connections to sewer, their connections to water, and now the emerging connections to stormwater and stormwater facilities is all reviewed through the Planning and Development Unit. Administration, we have a very large department. We have a very complex department. So administration, it's kind of the boxes that were across the top there, budgeting, financial planning, policy analysis, and then all of the support staff is centralized. So no matter where our support staff sits, whether it's here at City Hall or out at the shops or at Willow Lake, they all report to one supervisor that then reports to me, and that gives us the ability to better manage the quality control of all of our documents, all of our finances, all of our paperwork, and also allows us to better manage the people. So if we have if we're short one day at shops, we can move people out there. If we're short in other places, we can move people around. So it's something that we did early in my management of the Public Works Department. It's worked very well. And then engineering, I was having a conversation the other day with one of the council subcommittees. We run the engineering division like a consulting firm, and I realized after I said that maybe people don't know how consultants work. If there's no backlog, if there's no work, consultants don't make any money. So our engineering staff are truly there. Our project delivery people are delivering projects for the city, and we deliver all the projects for the city. So whether it's a water project, a sewer project, perhaps a future expansion of City Hall, the fire stations that were previously done, all of that is done by our project delivery people, and we fund them through projects. So we manage the flow of projects, what we call the backlog, very carefully, not just what we're doing this year, but what we plan to do in the next year or 2 years, 3 years. And actually, when you see the capital improvement program, the CIP, that is really our work program for the next 5 years. If we didn't have projects, we wouldn't have, those folks are primarily engineers, we would not have those engineers on staff. So we like to balance that. We neither overstaff nor understaff. We like to keep it at a balance so that we can keep about 2 years worth of work flowing, and that creates the stability and allows us to keep the good people that we have on staff. The engineering division also has survey, inspection, and then they also provide the plan review services for development services. So when applicants submit subdivision plans, the public infrastructure is actually reviewed by engineering but administered by development services. Then we also have customer service. We send over 50,000 invoices every month to our water sewer customers, the meter reading, and then we also provide dispatch services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that is actually the non-emergency arm of 911. A tree fell in the right-of-way, a water line breaks, somebody has any kind of issue, a signal goes down any time of the day or night, weekend, holiday, there's always somebody at Public Works Dispatch to answer the phone, and then dispatch our people out to address those issues. We run a fully accredited laboratory at Willow Lake. We're also happy to host a crime lab at Willow Lake. So the police are out there with us. They have their little bench that they use for all of their crime lab issues, and then we do all public outreach for environmental services. We have a requirement in our NPDES permit for stormwater that we provide outreach. So we're actually required by state and federal law to provide a certain amount of education, and that's that we provide all of those services as well. Streets and street maintenance, so everything from traffic engineering to signal operations, signs, markings, repaving, all of that is done by our streets operating units. Parks, operations, maintenance, and planning for our entire park system, and then recreation, that includes the senior center, our nationally renowned softball program, and then all of the facility use, event coordination, and youth recreation. So when events come to town, whether it's the art fair or hoopla or events at Riverfront Park, all of those are coordinated through recreation, and Becky George, who is the manager there, does an absolutely outstanding job, and And she also works for Public Works, so we do that as well. So that concludes my presentation. I can't stress enough, I appreciate the city manager laying out the forecast. Our number one issue, and I know that this is not the right presentation to do it, but I'm doing the intro and then we'll speak more about it in April. We have a serious problem in transportation funding, in streets funding. And if we don't address it, we simply will not have enough money, and within a year, we already are proposing to not do any maintenance in city streets. We're already proposing in our budget to not have any neighborhood solutions, to cut back on some of our traffic engineering staff. Within 2 years, we will do even more cuts, and the situation will be even more severe. I would dare say unsustainable. So it is an issue that we have to address. We've begun to address it over the last year, and it's something that the Budget Committee needs to be aware of, and we'll be ready in April to give you more details. So I just wanted to close with that, and with that, I am also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. Do we have any member of the public sign up?
I just have one question.
Would you like to step up to the microphone, please?
The microphone, Mr. Weiser.
Would you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Roger Heuser, 1395 High Street over here. The question is, if we have a water leak, a main leak, the water comes up and you get it fixed, how are you going to repair the street for that? Thank you.
Mr. Hoyser's my neighbor. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for the softball. All costs associated with the utility are paid for by the utility. So when we have not just a water main break, which are rare, but when we do repairs, when we do any project, all of the project costs, including the repairing the asphalt, curbs, sidewalk, bringing lawns back, all of that is borne by the utility. It's a project cost of the utility. So that is not a concern. So even if a streets crew comes back and does the repair, that streets crew is paid for that project by the utility. Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Member Bennett?
Thank you. Could you talk a little about services you contract out?
Sure. We do a significant amount of contracting for capital construction. In fact, it's probably our single biggest contracting. We contract out all capital construction. So the local firms benefit from that. In fact, on Monday, the council will receive a report about our annual report on the Streets and Bridges bond, and you'll see the amount. I'm not going to take away from the excitement of that presentation, but you'll see the amount of contracting that we do there. We contract a significant amount of our engineering. So our project delivery people, while they are registered professional engineers, we leverage their time with consulting firms that provide that service. So that is our single biggest piece. After that, there is some amount of contracting for small maintenance projects. So sometimes sidewalk repair that's a little bigger, some plumbing work that we may need to do. Where else do we, looking over at?
Large diameter pipe capping, large diameter pipe repair and replacement.
On the maintenance side.
Laboratory work, it runs the gamut,
Yeah.
anywhere from a couple $1,000 contract to a couple $100,000 contract.
Thank you, Francis Kessler.
Francis, do you?
What ward are you from?
Yeah.
Mr. Kessler actually lives in Kaiser, but we let him work here in Salem.
Well, what percentage of your budget is funded that way, or of the work is funded that way? Do you have a percentage of it?
Boy, I don't know that I can, it's in the budget book.
Okay.
So we'll be able to do that. I can't tell you, it's 100% of the capital construction. So that number I know for a
Okay.
fact, and that's the biggest number.
Yeah.
Beyond that, there's dribs and drabs of all of it, so we can get you, kind of a figure. There are numbers, in fact, in the budget book, you will see that there are materials and services cost codes that are for professional services, for contracted services. So those numbers pop out, and so we can very quickly tell you and you can see them, what those numbers are. But they are substantial. We are a substantial contributor to the local economy.
Great.
Member Bednars.
Thank you, Peter, for such a great report. I had two small questions. One first had to do with you said that you send out some 50,000 bills every month for water and sewer, and I know we have some now, including just stormwater, so I mean, some people who are outside of our water district get the stormwater. My question has to do with, on certain accounts, mainly those that are utility for commercial, fire suppression, for example, which is normally a steady fee. Is there any way to perhaps have one that is sent out every other month so that the cost of those 50,000 bills, we don't have to incur it as much?
We are working, I appreciate you asking me that, because Alicia Blaylock on my staff gave me a thorough summary of our efforts to proceed to electronic billing. And we've been working on that for a number of years, and we are actually getting very close to being able to offer a complete modern service where you can do electronic billing and then not have to send out any paper bills, and we hope to roll that out later this year. The system as it stands today, it would actually be harder and more expensive to do that. It's actually very inexpensive. On a per bill basis, it's something like less than 30 cents a bill to mail out the bill, just because of the pre-sorting and the way that we do it. But we want to get to the point where once you sign up for electronic bill pay, that we would not send out any bills, and people maybe in the future would be able to select different kinds of ways of doing that. I know that we don't have that many stormwater-only accounts, and those are accounts that people who live in the city of Salem but do not have a water account. So for whatever reason, they've built something on their property, might be on a well and a septic, but they still owe us stormwater money. So some of those people, those dollars are very small. They've actually prepaid. They've paid, it's $2 a month. They've sent a check for $25 and said, here, don't send me a bill. But it's just harder at this point in our system to pull those bills out. We want to get to the point where we would be able to do that. We're getting there. We're not there just yet.
I understand why we would send them out every month. I mean, the water sewer bills have gotten to a point where you would have sticker shock if you got it every other month.
Right.
I mean, the amount, just saying that there are, I have fire suppression and I pay $20 a month, and
Right.
I often send in $40 instead and hope that I don't get the next bill, but it comes anyway,
Yeah.
with a zero
Yeah,
balance.
it's
at that
just
point.
harder to, at this point, we're not set up. We'd have to do a hand cull.
Oh, okay.
So it just becomes more expensive than actually sending out the bill. But we want to get to the point where we would be able to do that, where you could make those kinds of selections, and then, our preference would be to get to the point where we wouldn't have to mail bills anymore.
Well,
Where people would just do
$15,000
it
a
all-
month and mailing, mailing for, that's a lot.
do it all online, and then we'd, we're constantly looking, obviously our geographic area continues to expand, our customers continue to expand. You'll see both in our budget presentation and then in our rates presentation in the fall that we actually have added very little or no staff. So we continue to accept more work and create efficiencies. Not having to print and mail bills would be a nice efficiency that would then allow our customer service people to address other issues. So we want to get there. That's our goal. We're not quite there yet. We hope to roll this program out later this year.
Thank you, Peter. I have
thank you.
another question, if I may. The other one had to do with I know we've had these conversations about the 50-plus center, and I don't know if that falls underneath Public Works or not.
It certainly does.
So where are we standing? I know that we had the intent of cutting them off so they were self-sufficient.
Right.
What's happening at this
Right.
point where we're moving forward?
We have had some nice success. So we've done things like renting the facilities out to generate income, looking for opportunities to generate other incomes. We're having some nice success with that. It is our long-term goal to be able to make them self-sufficient so we can take them off of the general fund rolls. We're really not there yet, and we really are not going to be there for a while. But every year, the staff there certainly understands that that's our goal. They're seeking ways to get there. But the reality is that we're still, unless we were going to do a wholesale change at the pace that we're going, it's still going to be a number of years before they are completely self-sufficient.
I mean, it's a wonderful building, wonderful programs that they put on. I've been out there many times. I just wanted to make sure, are we planning in 5 years or 10 years or 3 years to basically eliminate that money that's going out to them?
I would say that we're probably looking at 10 more than we are looking at 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Member Bennett?
Thank you. How many parks do we bring online each year?
We have been averaging a park a year.
Okay.
This last year, we brought on Hoodview. We have, I'm sorry, Councilor Clem isn't here, but Member Bondog Wynn is here. We're looking at Eola Ridge we're seeking a grant opportunity to match our SDCs to bring Eola Ridge online. And then in past years, we've brought on other parks. At this point, after Eola Ridge, we have no other parks planned. So we have, what we'd like to do is we'd like to talk to the council about the possibility of perhaps a bond measure in the future. You just fit it in, with there's the police facility, there's a future transportation bond, there may be others. We'd like to finish Gear Park, which is not finished. We'd like to get Battle Creek underway. I mean, we're making some investments there, but really get it underway. If we're successful with the acquisition of the 4 acres at Riverfront Park that the council is going to talk about on Monday, there is work to be done to complete that park. There's rehab work and expansions that we need at Wallace Marine Park. We need more softball fields so that we can, at this point, we're really, on our softball program, we're really running on our reputation. But the reality is that we need at least 4 more fields out there, and really a modernization of the 5 fields that we have. So there are a number of large ticket items that we need for the parks program, but in terms of parks coming online, Eola Ridge, and then we have nothing else coming up after that.
If I may, on Wallace Marine, how are you planning that? Are you seeing that in 3 to 5 years we'll add a new group of field?
Wallace Marine is we think we probably have, those fields alone are probably in the $10 million range if we wanted to add another facility. We've had some very preliminary internal discussions. Could we leverage some of the TOT?
Yeah.
Would we put it as part of a bond issue? Is there, can we seed the clouds and money and pennies fall from heaven? So we're looking at a number of different very preliminary options to see how we could do that. But we see that that is a need that we have in the park system.
Will you be talking to us about that during the budget cycle? I see it. It's in my ward, and I see it as a really important part of the tourism industry here.
Yes.
It seems to demonstrate every time we have a tournament, and we've been really successful. I think you're right,
Yes.
probably a lot on the tremendous reputation built, but at some point, when you look at what's going on in other communities where it feels like this is coming at us a little more rapidly, and that whether you'll ask us for tot money or will you take us down a road during this budget cycle to head us in that direction and get us moving?
Yeah, we can look at that. We don't really have plans to propose something. Oh, the city manager's going to bail me out.
So I should ask you.
That's okay.
Besides, see if you did.
Yes. You have a council goals session coming up soon, and it would be a great thing, I think, to talk about this topic at the council goals session.
Okay.
If we can get some direction from council about how you want us to move forward, then we can bring back some options for you. You just approved the Parks Master Plan, so now we know where we're behind where we'd like to be on what types of parks. you approved being able to do pre-development for parks, which we had actually planned for Hoodview, and then we're able to get grant funding so that we could actually finish the park. So as opportunities come forward, for grants or other things, we'll be able to do more parks. But getting that, telling us what you'd like to accomplish in council goals, and then we can bring to you in the future budget cycles how to get there.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Why is there such a shortfall in transportation?
There's a couple of things. Two items. The first is we are primarily funded with the local government allocation of state gas tax, which is a very volatile fund. The projections that the Oregon Department of Transportation had given us in past years have really been were much more optimistic than the money that really has come in over time. And then the recession really cut into the amount of money. It's all just it's gas tax, weight mile tax, and DMV fees. People aren't buying cars. There's less money in the fund, and it's just distributed. Roughly, there's some money's taken off the top, and then ODOT gets 50%, the counties get 30%, the cities get 20%, and then it's divided by population per capita. So very volatile fund. The other thing that has hit this fund is at one point we were receiving over $1 million a year from the general fund. And as the general fund has had the impacts, you saw the city manager's presentation, one way that the general fund has cut services is to cut the support to streets maintenance. So this past year was the last of the monies that came to streets. So in this coming fiscal year, there is no general fund support for streets. So that combination has really just gotten us into a heap of trouble from a funding standpoint.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, next on the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Next on the agenda is public testimony for any future budget issues. Anybody sign up? Nope. All right. Other business. This is, I believe, where we as a budget committee discuss anything we want or don't want to do. Member Bennett.
Sorry. Are you, I'm asking the manager, are you going to be making revenue recommendations in this budget? Will we see, as a budget committee, revenue recommendations?
We will have some for some aspects where we have fees that will be part of the budget. And you've asked us, the council and the budget committee has asked us to keep current on fees so that we can do them slowly over time and not have steep increases in any fees. So some of those will be coming forward. We would like to rethink, if council wants us to, what some options might be for transportation revenue. I think we'd want to have some probably work session discussions about that, and then I'm not sure if we'd be ready for this budget committee time, but by the summer I do think we need to give you some options. I know, this won't be the first time you've heard about it. You've really worked on that and struggled with that for a few years, so it's a difficult thing although we're coming out of the recession, but to add more charges to our citizens. But I think the impact of cutting what we're going to need to cut in transportation is going to not be well received by the community either.
Member Tesler.
I have a question about starting time of these meetings. Is this a good time to ask this question?
Sure.
Okay. Can we start at 6?
And generally we do. There was an event this evening that we had to postpone the meeting, but generally our starting times will be 6.
So we are going to go back to 6 o'clock?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or concerns?
I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up. Has there ever been any thought about I'm looking up at the city ward map, and there's that big gray area within the city boundary. Incorporating that, wouldn't that be a revenue generator? I imagine there's probably been conversation about that, but
Thank you for asking that. There's been a lot of conversation over a number of years about that. It's something that councils have struggled with over time. Currently, we don't have enough general fund revenue to really provide the level of services we'd like to provide within the city limits as we have it now. We have 2 closed fire stations, for example. We've had to make cuts in police and parks and really every service that we provide. So adding 2 fairly densely populated areas that have significant infrastructure needs and other needs would be a reduction in services to the rest of the community. There also are some just practical problems with being able to annex those areas because there's a lot of state legislation that limits our ability to require them to annex into the city. So there are those practical concerns, and then there are also the ability to provide the service concerns.
so on a whole, it wouldn't be a net revenue adding those.
It would probably be a net loss.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, next meeting is February 19th, 6 p.m. here, and I declare the meeting adjourned.
So now they feel